hold on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Story of the evening, and this is very spicy. It's coming from Dubai, and it says Dubai uncovered data leak exposes how criminals, officials, and sanctioned politicians poured money into Dubai real estate. So I know that, you know, they have like some tax like breaks and whatever, but the glamorous emirate also has a darker reputation as a tax haven, a top destination for illicit cash, and a preferred hub for money laundering, often through real estate.
Mhm.
What do you guys have to say about this?
I loved everything about this article. It had all the great elements. It had Russian oligarchs, it had money laundering, it had fraud, it had people living in the Emirates and not being extradited to the US for some reason, even though they have an extradition treaty. Evidently, they have an extradition treaty up to like a certain dollar amount. And then above that dollar amount, it's like you're good. Like, so
Or they have
like
enough juice.
and it also had the whole element where this is reporters taking data leaks and investigating the data in the data leaks to uncover stuff. So this is like this is the Panama Papers all over again.
Right.
So like this was a 2020 data leak that reporters got their hands on, and they started combing through the data, and they're like, oh, like this criminal owns all this property, and this person who's like wanted by Interpol is like living down the street. So like this was a great article. I recommend everyone read it. Super interesting. And I think that one of the things we're seeing with data breaches and data leaks is if you think what you're doing is hidden, it's not hidden, right? Like the Panama Papers exposed everyone, and the whole game was given up. Like everything they're doing out in the public.
Even the Swiss bank stuff that happened recently, right?
Yeah, UBS, I think it was UBS. They had, or maybe it was like
The other one.
the other
Deutsche
one.
Bank.
Well, there's Deutsche
Bank is
Bank,
another.
the Key Bank.
Mm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think the Key Bank is UBS.
I
Anyway,
think it was UBS, yeah.
I think it was UBS. But yeah, like Panama, nope. You've got I think something recently happened in the Caymans. So Caymans are out. Like UAE out, right? Russia's getting hacked, but guess what, Russia? When you invade Ukraine, all the hackers in Ukraine hack you,
Yeah.
right? So like Russia's getting hacked now. So like all this data is coming out into the public. So that is one of the fascinating things about the time we live, is that reporters have never had more access to secret data to call out like all of these shady dealings.
Credit Suisse.
Credit Suisse.
Credit Suisse. I will say for Panama Papers, and I think this is going to happen with this Panama Papers, we saw some initial outrage, some small consequences, but it was data that people used to map out relationships down the road. So we did not see the most damage from Panama Papers initially in the first or second wave, but there are long-lasting consequences to that data, and I think this is sort of the same thing. Governments are building cases with this data, basically.
Yeah.
Government moves so slow though.
Yeah.
They do, but at least I can speak, knowing the US federal government, they want their cases rock solid before they bring down the ban hammer. And once they do, they will bring down the ban hammer.
Yeah. But what do you think, Paul? Sorry, I interrupted.
Well, I just think it's interesting at this moment when there's a lot of thinking and questioning about, well, does anyone in the world still give a shit about living what we used to call a country where they elected governments and things like that, kind of old-fashioned ideas? And, a big aspect of this is, like you were saying, in the Panama Papers or in this stuff, is if the economy and the government and pretty much everything that happens is controlled by a handful of people doing whatever they want, It's interesting that this too is coming out right now, right? Because
Yeah.
someone's got to grapple with it. I mean, otherwise, what are we going to be living in, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, but I think the thing that's interesting about Panama Papers and then this story is that if you were an oligarch, right? If you were in business and you did what you needed to do with the government to get the blessing, then you're generally safe, right? You figured out the rules, you figured out how to exploit the system, and you could set up your own little private kingdom. And what we're seeing is that a lot of that's coming to light, right? Like, if you're just hiding out in UAE, you could think that you're untouchable, similar to a lot of the oligarchs in Russia who are now having yachts being seized. And so I think that, it's fair game on oligarchs now, which has not been the case in the past.
No, or it could even be just also on extremely wealthy people. It could wherever, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Because like you said, no information will remain secret
Yeah.
ultimately.
I mean, I think that if you have money and you're in UAE, you're not necessarily in this leak or being called out by reporters. But I think what is interesting is if you have ill-gotten money or
Mhm.
money through like exploitative practices,
Mhm.
then that's what these reporters are able to call it out. And that's going to increase pressure on the government. I'm sure that UAE is not enjoying this story because it
No.
makes them look.
Yeah.
And to your point, Paul, there's no such thing as useless information. In terms of this, every bit of information is useful, no matter how trivial it is.
Right. Yeah, it is.
Well, and what's always fascinating is the collage of information, right? Because every data point is related to every other data point, and you can pivot and you can explore. So like, let's say that I have a bunch of information about Shu, and then I all of a sudden have this one really interesting like phone number or IP address. And then I can say,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's interesting, right? Like, show me who else uses this phone number. And then you can keep exploring and exploring. So like, metadata is incredibly powerful if you know how to use it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've caught on a bit from you guys and Mike just pivoting around using the word pool and different stuff in the research tab. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You can find all kinds of things.
What's often fascinating is if someone uses the same password, but it's a unique enough password, you can actually use people's passwords to find their other accounts and their other
Exactly.
email.
Right.
And so you think about all these people that are like, I have a super unique password. And it's like, great, thank you. That will help me find your other records.
Your other
and
accounts.
persona for you.
I did it the other day. I put a password and a state and a last name in the word pool, and I found all the other accounts.
Well, and I think that these oligarchs and criminals and other people that are in this article are going to find out that like just having your information out there is going to be a huge liability.
Yep.
No fraud was committed.
This has been an episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches. If you liked everything you saw today, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you hated everything you saw today, please argue with the first people in the comments section.